And we are back with part 4, 7, 26. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure this is part 4. Long story short, this last section we're going to be going over just touching things up. We got our base objects that we made, we got our tree, and we got our building and our terrain. And everything's looking pretty nice. We got everything set up. So all we're going to need to do is use these elements and divide them up and try and make them look pretty. We're going to cover a few really basic things. Honestly, this last part is just kind of like a final touches sort of bonus aspect. Great example is up here with our terrain. You can actually just hit this add terrain neighbor button and then click over in these little sections and you're just building out the terrain really quickly. So we built our base terrain, I think in part 1. And now we're going to go back and just expand it real quick and easy. Our main focus is going to be on that central piece, so the rest of it doesn't have to be that detailed. We can just pop over here and then select raise and lower terrain. Grab a nice little brush texture and then just go to town. Maybe not so heavy. And I'm just kind of jumping around here and there, a little dabble do ya, and change up the brush texture and do a little bit more. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super detailed, even as far as like texturing, like painting materials onto this. We're going to go really basic because the camera's never going to be right up on them, and that's something that when you can't afford to know whether that's going to happen or not, you want to take advantage of it. A lot of times if you're building assets, you don't know exactly how that's going to be placed or viewed within frame. With this, we already know. It's nice and simple. We're focusing on this central point. The rest is just kind of background. It's nice to have a little bit more texture in the background. And I'm just blending our environment together a little bit more, just adding a little bit of color. If like I said, you're not going to view it from close up, but if you do look at it, when the neighbors are created, they just use the base checkerboard pattern, and that's the last thing you want. Here we go. This is what I was talking about. So I threw in this layer to this, and it just made the entire thing that. I think I talked a little bit about that in part 1, but essentially that's what's happening is because it thinks that that's the second layer on that particular terrain piece. It'll just auto texture it completely that, but that's okay. We can make it work. It's not a big deal. As a matter of fact, we can use that nice snow material and add a little bit of detail to our main featured mountain in the background there. See, I accidentally just clicked that rear terrain and it auto added that material to the second layer, which auto applied that material to the entire terrain chunk. But that's okay, we can go back and fix that as well. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Kind of a weird cutoff there, but I don't think we'll be seeing it in frame. It's like with this particular type of thing, or at least the way that I built the project that inspired this little series, the whole point was to make a pretty environment and then just pan a camera around in some nice cinematic camera movements. So this video is essentially covering the last steps of that, like getting the thing set up and the animation for the camera movement and whatnot. So we're going to take our one building, and again, like I said in the last video, you can make more buildings, but I'm just, for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to duplicate that. You can do that by holding Control D with the object selected, and then I'm going to scale it around a little bit. Again, that's R for the scale tool. Then we're moving it. That's W for the move tool. Another nice handy one is you can hit F with an object selected to focus your view on that object. And see, we're just taking this same building, just one building that we made, and scaling it and shaping it in different ways. And you can do a lot with a little bit that way. And again, we could have gone in and made 5 buildings, 10 buildings, 20. Honestly, 5 and then, a couple. If you plan your things out, you could toss, just some very lightly modeled, almost just cubes in the background with some textures on them, and they would do fine. But it's really all about what angles you're doing and where you're going to be at. You can see it's working really well with the volumetric lighting. And then we're going to do the same thing with our tree. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is add in a little bit of cloud movement. We're going to create a plane, scale it all the way up so that it matches our terrain size. At least that's good for now. And we're going to do a little bit of work in the shader graph. Alright, you want to right click, go to create, up to shader, high definition render pipeline, and we'll try lit. This should work out okay. Now what we're doing here is using the shader graph, and if you haven't used it before, it's probably going to look a little intimidating and feel a little bit overwhelming, but it's really not that bad. Pop up here and open the shader. It's going to be a little quick. Alright, you hit spacebar and then you can type in whatever you want, so just kind of follow along. Honestly, I still have a lot to learn about this, so we're going to go for simple noise and scale it around a little bit. That looks pretty good. Gonna do another gradient noise. Just move this up here. Then we're gonna add in a multiply node. I'm just dragging this over here so we can see what's going on. There we go. Wanted to make sure everything was working right. We're going to duplicate the multiply node, that's Control D, and then do it again. Alright, then we're going to add in a vector 1 and duplicate that. All that does is allow us to control a value within a node. It's going to be pretty nice. I'm going to toss in a tiling and offset node and then duplicate that as well. And then we're going to toss in a time node. Pop that over here. Like I said, it looks a little crazy, but it's really not that bad. You just want to connect the out to the UV top portion there. And then the multiply to the UV top portion there. Time to the top and the multiply. Like I said, it's going to look a little crazy, but it's all good. See, still working fine. Oh, yeah, I switched it. I'm sorry. The offset, not the UV. And that's going to give it a continuous offset based on the passing of time. I'm just going to save that so things don't get too crazy. And we're going to use this vector 1 to be able to slow that down a little bit. We're going to multiply our vector 1, which is just a number, with our passage of time. And that allows us to slow that rate pretty dramatically. And then we're just going to repeat that for the other side. Actually, let's reverse the rate on this half. There we go. We're going to multiply these two. So we're going to connect the top one to the bottom, bottom to the top. And you get this nice overlapping continuous animation. And you can play with things a little bit. And then just to clean it up a little bit, we're going to add in a contrast node. Just feed it right in there and then adjust until we get something that looks a little more cloud-like. We'll toss it into our color, but it looks like it's still going a little fast. Let's slow that down even more with the vector 1s. So instead of 0.1 and negative 0.1, it's 0.03 and negative 0.03. And let's save that. Now to make a material out of that, you want to right click on that and then head up and select Create Material, and it will automatically apply that shader to that material. And we're going to toss that onto our plane. I'm going to change the surface type to transparent, but we're getting sort of a weird effect there where the white isn't showing up. Alright, with our texture plugged into our emission, base color, and alpha channels, we're popping over here. And we still have green clouds, but what we're going to do, blending mode, change that to additive. And that's going to fix that lighting issue. I ran into that the last time as well, but I'd kind of forgotten what I did to fix it. But let's lower this down a little bit and give it a little bit of depth. Save it so it doesn't explode. If you pop into Window, go to Rendering, and then Lighting Settings, you can actually bake your lighting, and that can essentially preserve it in a certain way. See, it looks like I didn't have that marked, so maybe that's not it. Anyway, it can essentially maintain a really fantastic looking lighting without the cost of having to continuously generate that in real time. And also it allows you to fake some things, so you can have lights that are actually covered up, but because their lighting is baked, it still plays out fine even with that lighting covered up. Alright, so we have our lighting baked and things are looking pretty good. I love the details in these light maps. Alright, we have our plane here that has our custom shader on it. And to add a little bit more depth, what we can do is select it and then just hit Control D and duplicate it, and then move that up a little bit, and then just do that continuously a few times. However detailed you want it to be. It is going to cost you a little bit on performance, but you do get a nice kind of layered sort of 3D effect. So now our clouds look like they have much more depth to them. And it's mixing well with our lighting. Alright, next step is going to be to add some cinematic animations with our camera. We're going to do it with Unity's built-in animation system, and it is honestly just the easiest thing once you get the hang of it. So it's keyframe animation. If you're not familiar with that, I'd say check out a couple tutorials on the basics, but all in all, it's just about point and click. We're going to line our camera up and just stick it somewhere kind of cinematic. Alright, we got a pretty good angle there. We're going to hit Control and then 6 to open up our animation window, and then hit Create, name it whatever you want. This is where the keyframing comes into place, and it's very simple. You're going to like it. So wherever you want your object, in this case the camera, to start, you're going to put it there, hit this little record option, and then move it a little bit. You see you get a keyframe right there, and if you scroll backwards on the mouse wheel, you're able to zoom that out. All I did was move the timer to 10 seconds, and then I'm moving the camera to a second position. And then to do a cut, I'm just going to move a little bit after that, ideally 1 frame, and then move it to another position. And this is going to be a start position for a second shot. So you're transferring from shot to shot. I'm just planning it out a little bit. So we stick it in the start position, and then just zoom out a little bit and select a few seconds down the line, however long you want your shot to be. 15. And move it to your end position for that shot. And you can repeat this process as many times as you want. It's not perfect, but I ended up getting something along the lines of this right here. You can see the camera playing its animation, jumping from position to position. There we go, nice cut. Yeah, it's not perfect, but you know, it's really a proof of concept. The idea is you can take these things and build out an entire environment from it. Anyway, long story short, thanks for hanging out, guys. If this was helpful at all, like, sub, and share. I hope everybody stays safe. Take it easy.